Zek'tul had cataloged the feeding habits of acid-blooded marsh grazers, hive-fed cloud swimmers, and one species that photosynthesized through its knees, but nothing prepared him for the breakfast buffet at a Holiday Inn just outside Tulsa. He stood frozen before a rotating hot tray labeled gravy. It was not labeled what the gravy was made of, nor what it was meant to go on. Beside it were biscuits, though they bore no resemblance to anything biscuity. And directly across, a selection of meat logs called sausages, sweating in their own oil like self-basting larvae. "Is this a ceremonial spread?" he asked cautiously, antennae half-folded in confusion. "Nope," said Maria, the human EMT assigned as his Earth liaison, scooping eggs of uncertain structural origin onto her plate. "Just Tuesday." Zek'tul scribbled furiously into his neurotablet. Subject species consumes high-fat, high-sodium, protein-dense materials immediately after waking. Suggests a need for rapid energy replenishment, possible link to hostile environmental conditions or ritualized combat. And yet, as he watched a child pour maple syrup over meat and cake like discs in the same motionless daze most species reserved for trauma recovery, Zek'tul began to understand something terrible. These creatures chose this, voluntarily, daily. The Threxan Concord's elite nutritional team had landed on Earth 4 weeks prior, arriving in a stealthed biosurvey craft above the Great Plains, and deploying their specialists to major population centers under the guise of dietary researchers. Their objective was noble, if naive: assess human consumption patterns for future culinary diplomacy, ensure interspecies compatibility, and, if necessary, offer gentle corrective education for any health-compromising traditions. Zek'tul, a senior field analyst with 2 galactic decades of experience, had volunteered for Earth. He'd expected a standard case plant-heavy omnivores with a focus on sustainability, perhaps ritual feasting around reproduction or moon cycles. He had even brought algae supplement starter kits in case of trace vitamin deficiencies. Instead, within 48 hours, he had logged the following anomalies. Beverages containing near-toxic levels of caffeine were consumed not just occasionally, but routinely, sometimes multiple times a day. Items classified as snacks often included processed starches, compressed, and chemically flavored to simulate imaginary tastes, for example, Cool Ranch. Breakfast alone featured meats salted and cured beyond galactic recommendations, deep-fried dough, and sugar syrups poured over sugar discs. Food was consumed not just for survival, but for emotional management, competition, mourning, procrastination, and sport. Zek'tul had filed a preliminary report titled Homo sapiens, a dietary enigma of volitional toxin ingestion and emotional digestive triggers. The Concord Bureau of Metabolic Ecology thought it was satire. He was told to resubmit with scientific tone. 2 days later, he sat in the corner of a high school cafeteria in Dallas, carefully observing what the locals referred to as Taco Thursday. His translator software was struggling with slang and local vernacular. The words fire, bussin', and deadass had nothing to do with combustion, transport, or mortality. The meal before the students consisted of seasoned ground beef encased in a hard corn shell, with a garnish of shredded dairy secretions, diced vegetables, and optional fermented chili paste. Each child also had a flavored milk beverage, either chocolate or strawberry, and a neon-colored dessert bar with enough synthetic dyes to paralyze a treehopper larva. "This is considered a balanced meal?" he whispered to Maria. "Well," she said, fiddling with her stethoscope idly, "it hits the major food groups: protein, carbs, dairy, sugar, and regret." Zek'tul stared as one boy removed the hot sauce packet from his tray and poured the contents directly into his mouth without food accompaniment. His eyes watered, his nose began to run. He smiled. Zek'tul tapped his neurotablet again. Subject species displays masochistic gustatory behavior. Possible ritual, pain as social performance, neurochemical reward loop. Investigate further. Later that week, the team met in the main biosurvey craft to exchange findings. Zek'tul was not the only one disturbed. "I observed a female subject consume raw fish wrapped in algae sheets," reported Taloxa, his colleague from the Threxan aquatic subspecies. "Deliberate. No signs of coercion. My sample group mixed flour, water, and lipid extract to form a disc, added Guela, the Threxan microbiome analyst. Then applied animal remains, mold-derived proteins, and heated it until carbon began forming on the surface. This was called pizza and praised as an art form. Do we have biochemical impact data yet? Zek'tul asked. Too early. But early scans show gut flora so diverse it resembles post-plague ecologies. They can digest nearly anything, even things labeled as plastic adjacent. Is it possible, Zek'tul asked quietly, that we have misunderstood this species' position in their ecosystem? The team decided on a new directive: field immersion. No more second-hand logs or passive observation. Someone would eat what humans ate, under supervision, to assess metabolic impact. Zek'tul volunteered. I have detox enzymes modified for extreme digestion. I've processed sulfides secreting burrowers. I survived the Krakenthorn feast of Phaedril 9. I can manage this. His first test meal was simple: a drive-through burger combo, obtained at a roadside establishment adorned with a yellow M. The sandwich contained charred beef, dairy byproduct, vegetable slices, condiments with untraceable ingredients, and a bun that survived over 30 minutes without structural compromise. He took a bite. There was grease, sweetness, salt, umami, heat, cold, a complex emotional response he couldn't immediately classify. His antennae twitched violently. The world slowed. He managed to finish 3/4 of the meal before he experienced elevated core temperature and mild auditory hallucinations. Maria gave him water, then a carbonated beverage that made him burp involuntarily. She called it Sprite. It tasted like a citrus-based solvent. The combo meal, Zek'tul gasped, is a weapon. Some folks think so, Maria said cheerfully. You okay? I am not sure. She handed him a cracker. Eat this, it's bland. It tasted like regret in solid form. He felt better. By the end of the second month, the Threxans had compiled a planetary database of nearly 7,400 unique human food items. Patterns emerged, and none of them comforted anyone. Human diets were wildly inconsistent by geography, income level, and mood. They ate fermented foods not for necessity, but for pleasure, including rotting cabbage, aged curd, and entire fish buried in the ground. A subculture existed solely to test the limits of edible spiciness, creating sauces rated by a scale of heat units that frequently induced sweating, crying, and vomiting. Others trained to eat competitively, consuming dozens of hot dogs in under 10 minutes, to cheering crowds. I believe, Zek'tul said during one late-night meeting, that humans are apex predators, not because they kill with claws or venom, but because they choose to eat chaos. Explain, Tilaxa said, wary. They are opportunistic omnivores who adapted to scarcity by learning to eat everything, not just safe things, not just nutritious things, everything. Their bodies punished them, and they kept going. They made food dangerous and then made that danger into sport. They are soft-skinned and inefficient, Guela objected. Surely they are still prey in evolutionary terms. Tell that to the mammoth. Zek'tul's immersion peaked at the Spring River Chili Festival in West Texas. He had reviewed hundreds of entries for the event's annual Inferno Spoon contest, where participants consumed chili made with varying types of peppers, culminating in the boot jolokia, or ghost pepper, a spice level that humans approached with protective gloves and milk on standby. The label read, "Warning, not for human consumption." Zek'tul assumed it was a mistranslation of "not for untrained digestive tracts." It resembled a thick red paste, almost like a topical medicinal salve. He tasted a spoonful, and everything stopped. Every internal warning system in his body activated at once. His core temperature spiked by 7 degrees. His mucous membranes flooded. His heart rate quadrupled. He could no longer understand speech. All he could hear was the deep hum of the universe vibrating through the marrow of space and time. He saw, briefly, the edge of reality. Then he collapsed. Maria rode in the ambulance with him, one hand on a saline IV, the other fanning his overheated torso. He's tachycardic, but stabilizing, she said to the paramedic. Pupils responsive, O2 holding. Zek'tul groaned, clutching his midsection. What was that substance? Ghost pepper, Maria said. You took a spoonful of the concentrated sauce. You're lucky your throat didn't close. Why? Does it exist? She gave a tired smile. Honestly, because we like the thrill. Also, some people just don't have the spice gene. They'll eat this stuff like ketchup. That was not safe. Nope, welcome to Earth. She adjusted the blanket around his twitching limbs. Zek'tul's final thought before losing consciousness again was not about pain, or error, or even regret. It was awe. He had seen creatures bend the laws of digestion for pleasure, and somehow live. Zek'tul woke to a soft, rhythmic beeping, and the sterile scent of ammonia mixed with something strangely familiar burnt pepper oil and hand sanitizer. His abdomen hurt, his eyes stung, his throat felt like it had been scrubbed with desert sand. Above him, fluorescent panels cast their pale glow over smooth white ceiling tiles. Human technology. He blinked until his ocular membranes cleared and turned his head slowly, too slowly. The world dragged itself around him. To his right, Maria sat on a molded plastic chair, drinking from a paper cup. Her uniform was rumpled, her hair was tied back, a few strands falling over her cheek. Her eyes brightened when she saw him stir. Well, hey there, spicy boy, she said, setting her cup down and standing. Where is this? Zek'tul rasped. Small clinic just outside Lubbock. You passed out cold after the ghost pepper incident? That was 3 days ago. Zek'tul groaned. 3? You've been out most of the time. Your vitals stabilized by day 2, but we've kept you on fluids. No solid food until today. He shifted slightly, pain flaring from his midsection down through his limbs. I feel as though my digestive tract has been cauterized. More or less, yeah, Maria said. Capsaicin doesn't actually burn tissue, but your system didn't know that. You had a sympathetic neural cascade, sweating, muscle spasms, increased heart rate, respiratory distress, textbook pepper panic. Zek'tul closed his eyes. This species ingests that willingly? Not all of us, but some. Yeah, it's a badge of honor. Like wrestling a bear, only internal. I hallucinated the heat death of the universe. Maria chuckled, then handed him a cup with a straw. Start with water. Sip slowly. He obeyed. The cool liquid coated his throat. Relief. She pulled up a tablet and tapped the screen. We've run a full scan. No lasting damage, just inflammation. You had elevated creatine kinase levels and some electrolyte imbalance, but your system adapted fast once we got fluids in. You're tougher than you look. That is not comforting. It shouldn't be. You're lucky you didn't aspirate when you collapsed. Zek'tul sipped again, cautiously. The sauce. What evolutionary purpose? Maria shrugged. None, really. It started as pest deterrent. Plants evolved capsaicin to stop mammals from eating them. Birds don't feel the heat, so they spread the seeds. But humans, we just ignored the warning signs and decided we liked the challenge. Zek'tul stared at the wall, stunned. So you weaponized a defense mechanism, then consumed it recreationally. Welcome to the human experience. He remained under observation for 4 more days. The staff kept him on a bland, low-residue diet, clear broth, gelatin, and rice-based gruel. The discomfort faded gradually, though his internal temperature remained slightly elevated and his nutrient absorption had temporarily decreased. Maria visited daily, often during her break, bringing books and explaining local customs. On the 5th day, she entered with a tray of food. The smell made Zek'tul flinch. No spices, she promised, setting the tray down. Just chicken noodle soup, no black pepper, no onions. I read every label. He sniffed suspiciously. It smells safe. It is. Eat it slow. He obeyed, dipping the spoon carefully into the broth. Warm, salty, mild. The noodles were soft. The meat was tender and almost flavorless. His system accepted the offering. Thank you, he said, after 3 cautious spoonfuls. You understand our physiology far better than I expected. Well, I've treated a dozen alien digestive emergencies since the exchange program started. You're not the first to underestimate Earth cuisine. You are the first to down a spoonful of pure ghost pepper extract like it was cough syrup. It was red and labeled extreme. I thought it was an energizing tonic. She laughed, hand over her mouth. God, that tracks. Zek'tul tilted his head. Maria, why does your species derive pleasure from pain? She leaned back, thoughtful. I don't think it's about the pain itself. It's the triumph, the test, the story you get to tell afterward. We've been surviving harsh environments for millennia. Fire, ice, predators, famine. At some point, we made danger into entertainment. Food just followed. Zek'tul's translator clicked quietly as it worked through her sentence. So it is not nourishment, he said. It is ritual. Yeah, Maria said. That's about right. When he was finally discharged, Zek'tul returned to the biosurvey craft, gaunt and fatigued but stabilized. The Threxan team awaited him anxiously, lining the corridor as he entered. Tloxa approached first. We received the medical report. You nearly voided your liver sac. I am aware. Did you gain any usable data? Zek'tul handed over a neurocore containing his logged observations, biological scans, and symptom chronicle. Every second was data. Gwella watched him with reverence and horror. You consumed pure Scoville extract? I saw, beyond the veil. For the next 10 days, the team focused on compiling their final report. Zek'tul, still on a restricted meal plan, sipped algae broth while overseeing the construction of metabolic charts. The numbers didn't lie. Human digestive versatility exceeded projections by over 40%. Gut biota profiles showed absurd adaptability. Many individuals housed flora, capable of neutralizing chemical irritants that would incapacitate other species. The liver function of trained spicy food eaters was startling. Gastric resilience varied, but the median recovery from dietary trauma was unreasonably fast. Even their tolerances changed with exposure. Repeated ingestion led to increased resistance. They evolve individually, Zek'tul muttered, not just over generations, in real time. The other Threxans reviewed the data in silence. Finally, Tloxa said, Do we publish this? The Concord expects standard classification reports. This will upend metabolic hierarchies. We must publish it, Zek'tul said. Accurately. The Concord cannot prepare for collaboration with Earth without understanding what they are. And what are they, in your assessment? He exhaled slowly, mandibles twitching with fatigue. Opportunistic apex omnivores, capable of digesting toxins, adapting mid-trauma, and converting danger into culture. They do not hunt, Gwella argued. They do not kill for food as dominant species do. No, Zek'tul said, but they conquer the very things meant to repel them. They bend the laws of digestion for pleasure. They have turned nourishment into performance. They have declared war on their own innards and won. Weeks later, the report was finalized and sent through encrypted galactic channels. It was bluntly titled, Subject Species 00819 Earth, Adaptive Culinary Aggression and Digestive Overengineering. The Concord Scientific Bureau issued a formal response within days. Zek'tul read it alone in the ship's observation chamber, sipping a carefully bland protein blend. Report acknowledged. Conclusions alarming. Advisory Council recommends immediate review for symposium presentation. Request, formal human delegation to share survival strategies. Warning. Do not engage in culinary exchange without full biochemical vetting. Maria called him later that day, video flickering as her signal bounced through the outer comms net. You're famous, she said. I heard from my supervisor that the UN got a request for human speakers at some Galactic Food Council thing. Yes, Zek'tul said. They wish to hear how you evolved to ingest poison for joy. Well, she said, biting into something off camera, I suppose someone has to explain flaming hot Cheetos. Zek'tul flinched involuntarily. Please don't say that word. She grinned. Too soon? He nodded solemnly. Far too soon. The Grand Gastronomic Assembly of the Galactic Concord convened once every 8 solar cycles. Held in neutral orbit above the Verdian nexus, it was typically a peaceful affair, a polite exchange of culinary techniques, preservation advances, and diplomatic tasting ceremonies. This year, however, the venue required a full biocontainment wing, 3 emergency med units, and a mandatory chemical hazard team. Because this year, the humans were coming. Zek'tul stood behind a reinforced viewing panel in the Verdian Symposium Hall, adjusting his filtration mask as he watched a young man from Chicago prepare what he referred to as death wings. The man, Owen, had brought his own ingredients, small fowl segments coated in flour, fried in oil, then drenched in a sauce concocted from a dozen different chilies, vinegar, citrus, garlic, and something labeled only as Reaper Concentrate. Zek'tul had read the label. It was measured at over 2 million Scoville heat units. The bottle had a skull on it. A literal skull. The Concord's food safety chair, a wispy, photosensitive Luanthian, had nearly fainted when the human first uncapped it. Now, as Owen plated the wings on a sleek silver tray and casually wiped sweat from his brow with a disposable cloth, Zek'tul watched the delegation from the Plosari cluster inch further back in their seats. "Are you certain this will not start an interspecies incident?" Tloxa asked nervously, glancing at the program schedule. Zek'tul nodded. He signed the liability waivers. So did they. Did they read them? "I have stopped expecting that of anyone, Tloxa, especially humans." The demonstration began. Owen spoke confidently, showing slides of capsaicin receptors, diagrams of human intestinal linings, and anecdotal footage from contests across Earth. One clip showed a man weeping openly after a bite of curry, then declaring it life-changing, while a crowd chanted his name. Several delegates turned their visual organs away. One reptaric scholar excused herself entirely after seeing what humans did with fermented squid. Then came the tasting. And no one, not even Zek'tul, was prepared for what happened next. The first volunteer was a Ferlucian, a mucus-skinned herbivore species with a well-documented tolerance for acidic root vine cuisines. He was curious, even proud, as he approached the tray and took a bite of the smallest wing. 3 seconds in, his gill vents flared. 5 seconds later, he let out a sound like boiling algae and dropped to the floor in a full-body muscular spasm. Medical bots surged forward. His core temperature had jumped by 11 degrees. He had no allergic reaction, no anaphylaxis, just a total system override. When he recovered 20 minutes later, he claimed to have briefly seen the birth of the cosmos. Half the delegation wanted to adjourn the symposium immediately. The other half wanted to taste it. Maria arrived later that day, having flown in from the Earth liaison shuttle docked at the outer ring. Her badge read, Field Medical Officer, Human Delegate Support. She found Zek'tul standing beside a small Terran culinary exhibit titled Resilience Through Flavor. "You look tired," she said, sipping from a thermos. "I have not rested since the omelet bar this morning," he replied grimly. She laughed. "Should have skipped the eggs, you knew better." "I did not know there would be jalapenos inside the eggs." She tapped her badge. "I'm here in case someone's pancreas tries to escape their body. Again. I regret to inform you that happened just before lunch." Maria sat on a folding stool and surveyed the growing crowd. Dozens of species clustered around the human exhibit. Most kept a respectful distance, reading placards and analyzing samples. Others attempted to understand the variety of culinary objects behind the glass: preserved army rations, MREs, packets of instant noodles, hot sauce holsters, entire cheese wheels, a jar labeled Vegemite, and perhaps most horrifying, a loaf of white bread that had not molded in 3 weeks. "What are they reacting to now?" she asked. Zek'tul gestured to a looping video showing a hot dog eating contest from New York. The footage had been slowed down for clarity, which only made it more distressing. Competitive consumption, volume-based, unseasoned meat tubes, water, saturated bread. The record stands at 76 in 10 minutes. A Relari delegate staggered away from the screen and began softly weeping into her translator collar. Maria winced. "That's fair." Later, during a cultural panel on culinary endurance, Zek'tul sat beside Maria at the speaker's table. The moderator, a crystalline entity known as Orith, addressed them both with genuine confusion. "Why, in all that is molecularly holy, do your people ingest compounds designed to induce distress? What purpose does this serve?" Maria adjusted her mic. "Because it reminds us that we're alive." The room went still. Zek'tul translated quickly for those who lacked Terran linguistic plugins. "It's true," she continued. "We came from scarcity, drought, famine, war. We learned to make food stretch. Then we learned to make it taste better. Then we learned to make it hurt us because surviving that made us feel powerful. Some of us anyway. Orith blinked with internal refraction. But the cost, the suffering, surely that is wasteful. Not to us. Pain tolerance became a social signal, a rite of passage. We developed entire subcultures around flavor as challenge. Spice, sour, bitter, fermented. We test ourselves, and each other, through what we can endure. It's not always rational, but it's human. Zek'tul watched the audience shift uneasily. Some were horrified, others intrigued. That evening, at a diplomatic tasting gala, human dishes were technically available but required 3 waivers, a pre-screening, and a detailed metabolic scan. Most guests declined. Instead, the Threxan team offered its traditional algae paste stew, which Maria politely sampled. She chewed thoughtfully. "It's smooth," she said, "kind of like mashed peas, but gray." "That is the color of purity," Tloxa said proudly. Maria nodded. "Yeah, it tastes clean, like disappointment on a Tuesday." Gwela blinked. "Is that good?" Maria hesitated. "It's safe. That is the highest praise among our kind." Zek'tul tried not to sigh. He'd been back on solid food for 5 days now, but the thought of another cube of rehydrated nutrient paste made his antennae ache. He glanced across the room at Owen, who was laughing with a group of Xenar delegates while preparing a dish labeled Diablo Ramen. Zek'tul tapped Maria on the shoulder. "I believe we may have overcorrected." She followed his gaze. "Oh boy, what's he doing?" "Feeding them a pepper broth." "How peppery?" Zek'tul's voice lowered. "He brought Carolina Reaper dust." Maria was already moving. 30 minutes later, 4 aliens were under medbot care, and the symposium fire suppression system had been triggered by the amount of steam generated from open-mouthed panting. No fatalities, just pride injuries, and some scorched taste buds. Zek'tul sat with Maria at the edge of the gallery, sipping rehydration fluid and watching the interstellar chaos. "Your kind didn't just survive harsh worlds," he said. "You decided to recreate the struggle, even when you had plenty." Maria didn't argue. "You never needed to eat hot peppers. You chose to." She smiled. "That's the real spice of life." Zek'tul stared into his cup. "I once believed apex predators were defined by what they hunted, what they killed. And now?" He looked at her. "Now I believe they are defined by what they survive and still come back for seconds." The final day of the symposium began with silence. Not ceremonial silence, recovering silence. After 2 days of intense discussion, 7 minor medical incidents, and 1 diplomatic misunderstanding involving durian-flavored chewing gum, most of the delegates had agreed, unofficially, that human cuisine was not to be taken lightly, or quickly. Zek'tul arrived early, nursing a cup of broth and a sore stomach. He hadn't touched a human dish in 48 hours, and still his gut bioreactors trembled at the memory of what Owen had dubbed regret ramen. Maria greeted him outside the conference hall with a tired smile and a paper bag clutched in one hand. "Morning, champ." "I do not feel like a champion." "Well, you survived 3 meals, a pepper exposure, and your liver still functions. That's more than I can say for that poor Rilari botanist who tried the mustard pretzel combo." "Has he regained vision?" "Partially. Last I heard, he was experiencing color and musical notes." Zek'tul winced. Maria held out the paper bag. "I brought something." He hesitated. "Is it dangerous?" "No, just a burrito, basic one. Eggs, cheese, a little potato, no spice." I triple-checked. He accepted it cautiously, peeled back the wrapper, and sniffed. Warm, dense, balanced fat content, no aggressive scents. "This was a breakfast item?" "Yep, from a truck that parks behind my old station. We called it the Dawn Brick." Zek'tul took a bite, soft, savory, slightly creamy. His second stomach did not immediately recoil. His ocular receptors twitched. It was pleasant, simple, comforting. "I understand this one," he said quietly. "Not all our food is combat," she said, sitting beside him on the bench. "Sometimes it's armor, a way to hold something warm in the cold." The final symposium session was a closed assembly. No food, no demonstrations, just conclusions. Each species had 5 minutes to share their findings. The Wilathians spoke first, presenting their fermented tree protein paper. The Clarnians followed with a proposal for interstellar soil compatibility testing. The Plosari simply submitted a written notice. We decline future tasting opportunities involving Capsicum annuum or any subspecies thereof. Then came the human panel. Maria stepped up alone. Zek'tul watched from the side, arms folded, unsure what she'd prepared. She had insisted on writing her own remarks, despite several Threxan offers to translate her speech into bureaucratic Concord essay. She cleared her throat. Most species approach food logically: caloric need, nutrient ratios, sustainable harvest, clean digestion. You've built elegant systems that support life with consistency and care. Honestly, we admire that. Several heads inclined politely. But humans, we're weird. You've seen that firsthand. We eat things that fight back. We ferment on purpose. We season things into pain. We combine sweet and salty, hot and cold. We even deep fry ice cream. A murmur went around the room. She smiled gently. You think it's madness. I get that. But if I can leave you with one thing, it's this: our food reflects who we are. We're survivors. Not the strongest, not the fastest. But we adapt. And when we couldn't outrun the cold, or the dark, or the hunger, we invented flavor to make it worth staying alive. Zek'tul blinked. Maria continued. Every strange thing we eat is a memory, a story, a family ritual, a joke with friends, a dare from a cousin. A moment when the world felt too hard, and we used hot soup or greasy fries to make it bearable. Food is how we celebrate. It's how we grieve. It's how we say, we made it through another day. No one spoke. Even the Plosari delegation sat still, their gelatinous bodies held in respectful stillness. Maria stepped back and nodded. Thank you for letting us share our chaos. The applause was cautious, then warm, then loud. Later, the Concord Council extended an unexpected invitation. Earth would be added not just to the interspecies dietary archive, but to the Culinary Advisory Board, not as a case study, as instructors. The logic was simple. If a species could make palatable meals out of scorched grain, ground tubers, aged milk, and fish fermented in barrels, their insights might prove invaluable for survival planning on future colonization missions. Earth's official contribution would be dubbed Adaptive Culinary Strategy, psychological and digestive approaches to scarcity, shock, and celebration. Zek'tul received a commendation for his initial fieldwork and a permanent advisory seat on the Earth Nutrition Liaison Committee. He accepted with the quiet trauma of a man who had once mistaken ghost pepper sauce for a digestive tonic. 3 weeks later, back on Earth, Zek'tul met Maria in a park near her station. The air was crisp. Autumn leaves crunched underfoot. Somewhere in the distance, someone was grilling meat on a sidewalk setup that definitely wasn't zoned for open flames. They sat on a bench. Maria passed him a paper cup. It's cider, she said. Hot, sweet, cinnamon. Zek'tul sipped carefully. His digestive system now had a programmed warning for human beverages served above 130 degrees. But the cider fell just under. It was spiced but mild. A whisper of warmth instead of a punch. He found himself relaxing. So what's next? Maria asked. I've been asked to oversee culinary acclimation protocols for the next 10 species we initiate contact with. Good. Someone's got to warn them. I'll start with a section titled, Never Trust the Phrase Mild Sauce. She grinned. Progress. They watched 2 children share a bag of rainbow-colored corn snacks, fingers stained neon orange. One child sneezed, then kept eating. Zek'tul shook his head. They will inherit the planet. They already have. He turned to her. I have one final question. Shoot. Why? Do your people eat pickles with peanut butter? Maria paused. Okay, that one's weird even for us. He nodded solemnly. I feared as much. That night, Zek'tul filed his final personal log to the Concord. Human dietary behavior remains largely inexplicable, but purposeful. It is emotional as much as biological, dangerous, yet deeply connective. Their resilience is embedded not just in what they eat, but in the way they insist on tasting every possibility, even the ones that might hurt. They eat not just to survive, but to remember, to challenge, and to hope. This is not madness, it is adaptation. And they are very, very good at it.